There is a muscle in your body that most people completely ignore. And it turns out that ignoring it may be one of the costliest health decisions you can make as you age. It sits quietly in your lower leg. It never makes the cover of fitness magazines. It does not look particularly impressive when you flex in the mirror. But researchers have discovered in recent years that this muscle, the calf complex and specifically its deep layer called the soleus, is connected to your blood sugar regulation, your cardiovascular health, your cognitive function, and your risk of the kind of fall that can permanently change your life. The good news is that you can meaningfully strengthen it, without ever standing up. The phrase, second heart, is not just a poetic metaphor. When your heart pumps blood downward through your arteries to your feet, gravity becomes a problem on the return journey. Getting that blood back up to the heart, against gravitational pull requires assistance, and the calf muscle is the primary mechanical pump that provides it. Every time you lift your heel and push through the ball of your foot, your calf contracts and squeezes the veins inside it, propelling blood upward with pressures that can reach 140 millimeters of mercury. When this pump weakens, blood pools in the lower legs, ankles swell, varicose veins form, and the risk of dangerous blood clots increases. A long-term study tracking adult patients by measuring their calf muscle pump ejection fraction found that impaired calf pump function was an independent predictor of overall mortality, with death risk rising measurably for every 10% decrease in pump efficiency. Your calves are not a cosmetic concern. They are a cardiovascular organ. The aging process is unkind to this particular organ. After the mid-30s, the human body loses roughly 1 to 2% of its muscle mass every year, and by the 60s that rate accelerates. A domestic research study that examined 657 older adults between the ages of 70 and 84 found that 82% of those diagnosed with sarcopenia, the clinical term for age-related muscle loss, had a calf circumference below 32 centimeters. Current international guidelines now flag a calf circumference below 34 centimeters in men, and below 33 centimeters in women as a warning sign. A measuring tape is all you need to check where you stand. The consequences of sarcopenia extend well beyond thin legs. Research aggregating multiple studies reports that sarcopenia raises the risk of falls and fractures by more than 3 times, the risk of metabolic syndrome by 2.6 times, and the risk of cardiovascular disease by 2.3 times. Among older adults, a fall leading to a hip fracture is frequently the event that ends independent living entirely. The connection between calf muscle strength and brain health is equally striking. Studies on older populations have found that individuals with a calf circumference below 33 centimeters show significantly higher rates of cognitive decline. Research from a major Korean hospital reported that each 1 kilogram increase in limb muscle mass was associated with a 40% reduction in dementia risk. The mechanism runs through blood flow. When the calf pump works well, venous return to the heart improves, cardiac output increases, and the brain receives richer blood supply. Strengthening the calves is, in a very real physiological sense, a strategy for protecting the brain. Now to the discovery that made headlines in medical and fitness communities alike. A research team specializing in human movement science published a landmark study in a peer-reviewed journal in 2022 that examined a simple, seated movement they called the soleus push-up. The participant sits in a chair, places both feet flat on the floor, and then raises the heel as high as possible, while keeping the ball of the foot on the ground, then lowers it back down, repeating the motion continuously. What the researchers found was extraordinary. When participants performed this movement during the period following a glucose drink, post-meal, blood sugar spikes were reduced by up to 52%, and the amount of insulin the body needed to manage those spikes fell by up to 60%. A follow-up clinical study published in 2024 with prediabetic participants confirmed approximately a 32% reduction in blood glucose during an oral glucose tolerance test when the soleus was kept continuously active. Why does this small, seated movement have such an outsized effect? The soleus muscle, despite accounting for only about 1% of your body weight, has an unusually high capacity for oxidative metabolism. Unlike most muscles that tire quickly under sustained activity, the soleus can maintain elevated metabolic activity for hours without fatigue. When it is active, it draws glucose directly out of the bloodstream as fuel. The researchers described the seated soleus push-up as more effective at sustaining glucose metabolism than any other commonly recommended method, including walking. For anyone who works at a desk, spends long hours in a car, or finds standing exercise difficult because of joint pain, this finding is genuinely significant. To perform the seated version correctly, sit upright with your feet flat on the floor and your knees at roughly a 90-degree angle. Raise your heels as high as they will go, while keeping the front of your foot on the ground. Hold briefly at the top, and lower slowly. The key is duration, not speed. Performing this movement for 20 to 30 minutes after a meal, at a comfortable and sustainable pace, produces the metabolic benefit shown in research. You do not need to count repetitions obsessively. Just keep the muscle gently working. For those who want to build visible strength and muscle volume in the calves, the standing version is more effective. Stand with feet shoulder width apart. Rise onto the balls of your feet as high as possible. Hold for 1 to 2 seconds, and lower slowly. Doing this on the edge of a step, allowing the heel to drop below the level of the toes, increases the range of motion and amplifies the training effect. A starting goal of 20 to 30 repetitions per set, 3 sets daily, is appropriate for most middle-aged adults. Balance concerns can be addressed by resting your fingertips lightly on a wall or chair back. Your calves are trying to tell you something every time they ache after a long day on your feet, or every time your ankles swell after a flight, or every time you feel unsteady on uneven ground. They are asking you to train them. The science now tells us clearly that the calves are not just a lower body aesthetic concern. They are your second heart, your metabolic engine, and one of your brain's best allies. And you can start building them right now, sitting exactly where you are.